ikaze nanone kuri wowe udahwema kubana natwe kuri Intashyo Talk. Ndiyamini Intashyo, ndagusuje cyane, mwifurije kumererwa neza cyane. Anyway, ndagira ngo turebere hamwe imwe muri interview zikomeje kunyeganyeza isi kano kanya, by'umwihariko aka karere duherereyemo. Ni interview umukuru w'igihugu cy'u Rwanda Paul Kagame yagiranye na Mario Naufal. Uyu ngo akaba ari umwe mu banyamakuru bakomeye cyane, by'umwihariko biciye kuri ku rubuga rwa X cyangwa se urubuga rwa Twitter. Akaba ari nawe founder wa IBC Group, akaba ari ahantu agenda aganira n'abanyapolitiki ku bintu bigiye bitandukanye. Yaganiriye byinshi n'umukuru w'igihugu, ariko ndaje nkugezeho bimwe mu bisubizo bidasanzwe cyangwa se namwe magambo aremereye akakaye umukuru w'igihugu yagiye atangaza. Ijambo rya mbere nagira ngo mbwire ngo ndashaka ubanze wumve kano kantu.
If you're sitting privately with President Felix right now, what would you tell him?
I would tell him I wish he wasn't president of that good country.
Ahanga umukuru w'igihugu yatangaje ati, umunyamakuru Mario Naufal yamuwaje ati, ese uramutse uri kumwe na Felix Tchisekedi aka kanya nubuye butumwa wamuha? Umukuru w'igihugu adaciye ku ruhande ibyo nabonye bamwe bakoresha imbuga nkoranyambaga bise ngo kubaga nta kinya, yavuze ati namubwira ko atarakwiriye kuba umukuru w'igihugu cyiza nka Kongo. Ati ntabwo akwiriye, ntabwo abimerita kuba yakwitwa umukuru w'igihugu cyiza. Igihugu Kongo yise cyiza cyane, ariko gifite umuyobozi utagikwiriye. Mu bindi byagiye bitangaza abantu benshi, nandi makuru yamenyekanye ko President Felix Tchisekedi yigeze gukora akazi ko kudeliveringa amapiza mu gihugu cy'Ububirigi. Ibi nabyo bikaba byaje gushyirwa hanze n'umukuru w'igihugu, avuga ati buriya Felix Tchisekedi yigeze kuba umuntu udelivera pizza. Rero ati byo kujya ku buyobozi byo ntago tubizi, ntago tuzi nuko yabugiyeho. Ayo namwe mu magambo umukuru w'igihugu yagiye atangaza mu kiganiro agirane na Mario Naufal. Ndaje rero ngukinire zimwe muri clip z'iyi interview, hanyuma uze kumbwira icyo utekereza kuri aya magambo akomeye umukuru w'igihugu cy'u Rwanda Paul Kagame yaje kuba atangaza. Hagati aho nubwo Paul Kagame yatangaje ibi ngibi, ndagira ngo nkubwire ko ubu tuvugana umuvugizi w'ibiro by'umukuru w'igihugu cya Repubulika na Demokarasi ya Kongo, uyu nguyu ntiyigeze yemera cyangwa ahakane ibyatangajwe na Angola ku butegetsi bw'iki gihugu bugiye kugirana ibiganiro n'umutwe wa M23. Ni mu bihe binyuranye President Felix Tchisekedi Chilombo wa Repubulika na Demokarasi ya Kongo yavuze ko igihe cyose azaba akiri umukuru w'igihugu adateze kwemera ko guverinoma yiwe igirana ibiganiro n'umutwe wa M23. Mu gihe rero byitezwe ko n'ubundi hari ibiganiro byinshi ubutegetsi buzakomeza kugirana na bimwe mu bihugu kugira ngo bareke ko bahoshira intambara. Ubutegetsi bwa Angola bwo nk'umuhuza mukuru w'ikibazo cya M23 ndetse na Repubulika na Demokarasi ya Kongo bwo bwari bwatangaje ko leta ya Tchisekedi yiteguye kujya mu biganiro n'umutwe wa M23. Dore muri comment section niba utarakora subscribe udutere inkunga ikomeye cyane, unambwira icyo utekereza kuri interview mukuru w'igihugu yagiranye na Mario Naufal. Hanyuma dore muri comment section. Nitwamini Intashyo, iyi ni Intashyo Talk.
You know, Felix spent many years in Belgium.
He was a taxi driver.
He was a taxi driver. He was many things of that kind, but even with a very bad reputation. The man who employed him, an Italian family, an old man now, who employed him, he was delivering. The man has a shop, a pizza shop, and Felix used to deliver. So when this old man heard that Felix had become president, he said, "Oh my God." He said, "This one?" Then he told the story. It was even written. I hope you can show it.
What was the story?
It was like, this guy who could not even do the job of delivering pizza.
How did he become president?
I don't know. For example, when I told you that we asked these aid donors to really give us a chance so that as we benefit from their aid, we're also building our own capacity so that we don't perpetually depend on them. That's about dignity.
That's exactly what aid organizations should want you to do.
Yeah. And it's about you putting yourself in a certain position that you really don't want to be dependent forever. It's about dignity. When we are telling people, don't push to us second-hand clothes endlessly. Let's have a time we can stop this, but also at the same time we develop our textile industries. It's about, you can't think like that and act like that unless you are mindful of what is your place in this world. It's about dignity.
You even went as far as making begging illegal. Is that true? Or that's false?
Begging
for money. Was that it made illegal at any stage?
in a way that I think that must have come from that, because
so it was true. It was made illegal.
It was true.
Okay.
It is true.
You made that decision.
And in fact, what we did, we put 2 processes in place.
It's fascinating. Rule of law.
Yes, we did 2 things. One is for those who are capable. We gave them a chance to be trained to do something so that they can live on their earnings rather than those who are not capable, either handicapped in one form or another. We have a mechanism in the government of looking after them from government coffers.
So you built it into a system where it no longer wasn't degrading as begging. It was no longer the dependence that existed during colonial times. You focus really on just changing everyone's mentality to no longer depend on others.
That's exactly what it is. Because you could find some people on the streets begging, young men and women who are like 15, 16, 17.
When they could go and work.
When they could go, even started to do something. And in fact, we put a technical school which can take in up to close to 1,000 people in the western part of our country to teach people mechanics, or, to be a mechanic, motor vehicle mechanic, or whatever, that category of things. And these young people were sent there and they learned to do things. I was told, for example, the first batch that came out of that training, which went on for about 6 months, and then later on it was increased to a year. The first batch of 6 months, when they got out of that place, 70% found employment.
Wow.
70%. We did 2 things. We reorganized our own people, and we're in no way hiding the fact that this was almost an impossible task to rebuild the country that starts from below the scratch and empty of people, because the refugees had others were displaced internally. 3 million went to Eastern Congo, about 700, 800 went to Tanzania, others hundreds to Uganda, others hundreds of thousands to both Uganda and Burundi. So we had others internally displaced in their thousands. So we had now to create a sense of security to allow people, and started encouraging people not only to come back from outside, but also for those internally displaced to go back to their places, and assured them nothing is going to happen to them, which we succeeded in doing. Now, this is where it becomes even very interesting. For the millions of those who were in Eastern Congo, they were held captive by the army that fled with them, and they had all kinds of arms. They had tanks, they had artillery, and they were all positioned in the camps.
They had, so when they fled the AFDR, when they fled to Congo, they fled not only with like machine guns and machetes,
No,
they had
huge
tanks.
arms. Yeah.
And from what I know as well, the French troops, I think it's UN peacekeeping troops, they gave them a safe passage into Congo.
They did.
Right after the genocide.
From 2 points, one southwest, Rusizi area, and then from northwest to...
Because they expected, I'm assuming they expected the RPF, your group, to commit reprisal attacks and kill them.
Not only that, they might have expected that, but more so, they had wanted to find time to reorganize and attack the country again, to take over the country.
That was their plan.
That was their plan. That's how they went with arms. They went with everything, by the way. The treasury was empty, the central bank, all the money taken, everything. They were living in a place called Mugunga in eastern Congo, where even now there are refugees. But the point I'm bringing up is interesting, that is interesting for me is we kept urging them to come back and reassured them that nothing would happen to them. But those leaders, both in the army and in politics, were refusing them to come back, the millions. So what we did, and we warned them. We warned them that if they don't come back, two things. We will repatriate them forcefully because we don't even want the defeated army and the militias to hold them hostage and later on use them to come back. And we did that surgically. We did it actually with the minimal. So we kept urging them. And when we went and surrounded these camps and told people, ordinary people, to move out and leave these armed groups there.
You did that, what, through radio broadcasts?
We were doing through radio broadcasts. We were using UN as well, and we were sending people who had relatives among them to go and talk to them. They went. So
the UN was telling people that?
Yeah.
Okay.
We prepared that. So we actually now forced them back.
Okay.
And they came. Now the story here I'm driving at. Now the whole world, there was minimal loss of life in what we did, but we stood accused of having forcefully repatriated people. And the world was blaming us. For quite some days, they were all flowing, just like a river, more or less.
In the 90s?
Flowing. Yeah, that was the 90s. Okay. And they were being accused. Now, the point I'm making here is the aid, the humanitarian industry had taken hold of things. So these camps should remain like that forever.
So the aid agencies they're meant to help people build their own life and move on from the camp is meant to be temporary.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying that aid agencies had an incentive to keep that camp as is
forever. It becomes an industry on its own. By the way, that is what the accusation is in Eastern Congo currently. But there have been camps there even before Goma fell, or before the war, because of the chaos that has been going on in Eastern Congo. Now that these people took over FCM23, and people have actually started going back home, who now entirely, the whole group has gone home, the aid agencies are accusing M23 and AFC of causing a humanitarian disaster. Because there are no longer many camps to look after. So that becomes a humanitarian disaster.
So what they're calling is a humanitarian disaster is people moving on from the camps and going home.
Yes.
But what's their incentive? So there must be a financial incentive then for them to run the camps? Because there's no other... Why else would...
Of course there are.
So saying...
There is money flowing into these organizations for humanitarian activities or to run these camps. If you don't have these camps of people displaced, where even if you got the money, you say, unless you go to their homes and help them from there, which would be a noble thing. But that's not what they do. They complain that they have left camps and they are not able to feed them with all kinds of things that... so that becomes a political issue.